Hey guys, it's Amara here and I'm very sorry for my hair. It is very damp and it's currently still drying, but I noticed that a lot of you guys loved my culture shocks in London video, so I decided to do another video in regards to my study abroad experience, and I'm going to highlight some of the things that I wish that I knew before I studied abroad in London. I would like to preface by saying that a lot of these things are going to sound quite obvious, and they are very obvious, but as a 19-year-old who was studying abroad for the first time, and whoever ever traveled on a plane before for the first time, and that was the first time I ever left the country, a lot of these things I did not even think of, I did not even know, and my university gave me a study abroad packet that highlighted things for me to focus on. So if things were not in that packet, I did not focus on that. So I literally only focused on that one packet that my university gave me, which I definitely should not have done. Looking back as a 22-year-old, I know that I should have educated myself a lot more and I should have done so much more research before officially going overseas, because there are quite a few things that I did not even think of or know of before studying abroad. So let's just get right into it. The first one is going to be super obvious, but that is bring more money than you think that you will need. So when you study abroad, it is quite expensive, and that's basically a given. My university suggested that the amount of money that you would need would be around $3,500 to $5,000 for an entire term. And I only brought around $3,500, which was suggested, and I needed more money than that. I want to say like around $5,000, close to $5,000. And I was also unaware of how expensive London is. I knew London was expensive, and honestly, I did not realize how expensive it was until I got there. 3 months in, before COVID hit, I was slowly running out of money. And it was honestly really scary to realize that you only have a limited amount of finances left and you are in a foreign country. That can be quite terrifying. So I definitely recommend bringing more money than you think that you will need, and also doing some research on the place that you will be staying in for your study abroad term, and you should definitely become familiar with their currency and the average price of living over there. I also recommend, in terms of currency and financing, to really do research on places where you can do a currency exchange, because when you do a currency exchange, there are so many places out there who definitely will take so much money from you. So for example, when you have, let's say, like 20 USD and you exchange it for pounds, you will be losing so much money when you exchange currency when you are already over there, which can be really frustrating, especially as a college student who already doesn't really have much money. Try and find places with the lowest currency exchange rate so you are not losing a lot of money when you exchange your currency. I also recommend, when you are studying abroad, to definitely save up a lot of money before you go over there, because you most likely will be traveling to other countries that are around the place you're staying. So you're going to be spending a lot of money, not only for your living expenses, but also for traveling around to close and nearby countries. And that is something that I did not take into consideration whenever I went to study abroad, because I was so enamored by the thought of going over to England. Unfortunately, my dreams were cut short because of COVID, which was absolutely devastating. Going to England was on my bucket list that I created when I was 13, and I actually still have my bucket list hanging on my wall next to my vanity. Whenever I finally got the chance to study abroad in England, that was the only thing I was thinking of, was staying in England and like traveling around England. I did not even think about the other countries that I would book plane tickets to. So definitely save up a little money before you're going to study abroad, and definitely bring more money than you think you will need for other trips and expenses. The second thing that I did not think of before studying abroad is my phone situation. So this was something I literally did not even think of. It never even crossed my mind. I never even thought to ask my parents about like an international phone plan, which I know sounds really dumb, and it kind of is, you know. I didn't know. I didn't think about it. Again, this is the first time that I ever left the country. The first time I ever went on a plane. So quite frankly, it really did just totally flew over my head. I didn't even think of trying to get a new SIM card and what would happen with my phone when I was overseas. So thankfully, the phone plan that I currently have is pretty good. So when I am traveling overseas, I can send texts to my friends and family for no cost, but to make phone calls, it will cost a lot of money, which is something that I didn't think of and we didn't even realize until my family got the phone bill, and they're like, oh my god, Amara, like, you're gonna have to stick to texting. But I do know when you use FaceTime, it's free of charge because you're using the Wi-Fi. When I was overseas, I was introduced to WhatsApp, which is a phone messaging app where you can basically sync up your contacts with your phone. You can make like FaceTime calls, phone calls, and send texts all through this app, which uses the Wi-Fi, and that is how a majority of people in Europe do contact one another. So that was really nice to have. And whenever I did land in England and I got to my dorm, each of us got a little packet with a SIM card, but the SIM card unfortunately did not work in my phone, and I knew a lot of people that were having a lot of complications with the SIM card because my phone was not unlocked. I don't really understand like the whole phone world lingo and what like having a locked and unlocked phone means, but my phone unfortunately was not unlocked, so the international SIM card would not work in my phone. So that is definitely caused me a lot of stress because that was before I was aware of WhatsApp and before we got our international phone plan sorted out. So I definitely recommend doing some research, finding out if your phone is locked or unlocked, and overall educating yourself on messaging services that you can use before you go abroad, such as WhatsApp, and also doing some research on SIM cards. The third thing that I did not know before studying abroad was the restaurant situation. That is definitely something that you should educate yourself on before you are going to study abroad. You know, restaurants and payment methods are different in every country, and as someone who has never been to Europe, I at first did not realize that tips were included. I thought that you had to tip because that's what you do in America, and this was just ignorance on my part and something that I really did not know anything about. And I also didn't realize that in a lot of places in the UK you do have to ask for the check. They do not just bring it to you. So definitely look up some stuff. I know that sounds so small, but when you're studying abroad, you're most likely going to be eating out a lot. So it is really helpful to kind of educate yourself on what to expect, especially in regards to the water preference. I know this sounds so silly, but the first time my friends and I went to London and we went to the first restaurant, literally the day that we landed, we sat down, we were so confused because the waitress was asking us a bunch of different questions about water and water preferences, and we had no idea. And we also were waiting for the check for a while because we didn't realize that we had to go and ask them. And yeah, that's just something that might sound so small, but it's kind of a big thing, and I totally recommend doing some research on, again, like restaurants and eating out before you do study abroad, and just trying to understand like their culture more before you go over. The next thing that I wish I knew before studying abroad over in London is fashion. So I felt pretty excluded when I was like walking on the streets, when I was going out, when I was hanging out with some of my like Italian and Swedish friends and my roommates who were from Europe. I felt like I didn't fit in because of my clothing, and that is because I really did not do much research on the fashion and the outfits that people in the UK commonly wear. This is gonna sound so stupid, but when I was over there, I felt like I just looked American because of how I dressed. And I definitely wish that I did more research on their clothing choices before I went over there, because I think I might have felt more comfortable when I was going out, because when I went to London, my main goal was to kind of blend in. I really was trying so hard to just blend in and honestly make that my home for 5 months for the entire semester. And I never wanted to be like a tourist. I really wanted to fit in, and I felt like I stood out so much because of my clothing choices. In central London, I don't know how true this is for like the rest of England, but I studied at Regent's University, and I'm not sure if any of you guys know where that is. A university that is owned by the Queen, and it is very wealthy and high class, and it is right in central London. This university is by Baker Street. It's literally like 3 minutes away from the Sherlock Holmes Museum on Baker Street. And let me just say, everyone in that central area of London wore a lot of blazers. They wore a lot of like black slacks and a lot of like dressy business clothes, which is something that I did not bring. And honestly, I don't really wear blazers or slacks. I just feel like it's not that common in America unless you work at an office. I definitely wish that I brought more clothes like that, because my Swedish roommates and Italian roommates, that's all they wore. They wore blazers like every single day, like black trousers every single day with like really nice shoes, and I just kind of had like my scuffed Doc Martens and like my jean jacket. And there were parts of London that were more kind of alternative, where the attire did match like what I was wearing, but overall I felt like I definitely stood out a lot. So I wish that I did more research on outfits and their clothing before I went over to study in England. Another thing that I wanted to mention is stereotypes. So this is something I did not really think of whenever I went over to England. I really did not think much of how people would perceive me. Again, I was so focused on trying to learn like their culture and how they live, and just, you know, make that my home for 5 months. But when I went to my university, I realized a lot of people there did not like Americans, and it was sometimes really hard to overcome. We had this giant blackboard. First of all, I really don't even recommend the university that I studied at. There were so many problems. That's just a video. That's a whole new video. Basically, at my university, in the main common area, there was a gigantic wall with blackboard paint. So you could use chalk and write and draw whatever you want. And a lot of the chalkings on this wall and a lot of like the pictures and comments were about like Americans and how we are so weird and like things that people didn't like about us. And every time I would see that, I would feel like even more of like an outsider, like it was almost impossible for me to fit in. And whenever I would go to the bookshops over there, they'd always have like an American section, and they would be like these books like mimicking and mocking Donald Trump. And even whenever I was walking down Baker Street, and there were so many little like pop-up shops where people were selling like, you know, those like tourist stands where they're selling like London merch and like t-shirts and hoodies dedicated to London. There was this really nice older lady, and when we were talking, she realized I was American, and she was just asking if I support like Donald Trump and what my politics were. And it was kind of hurtful that when people see an American, they just immediately associate them with Donald Trump. And I understand it, I really do, and I get it. It's just, I never voted for Donald Trump, and he's not someone that I ever followed, and I don't agree with his like beliefs or his politics. So sometimes it was really hard to be identified as an American and connected to this one like guy that ran your country, which I totally understand, but sometimes it was really overwhelming. It was overall sometimes just really difficult to blend in, and I didn't even think about how people would perceive me in a different country. So that's something that I definitely wish that I knew before I studied abroad. Thank you guys so much for subscribing, and if you're not already subscribed, please hit the subscribe button right down below and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I am hoping to do some more study abroad themed content, so if you guys have any ideas or if you guys want to see anything specific from me, please comment down below. But other than that, I hope you guys have a great day. Bye!